This morning I'm answering questions on all the hot topics in the Arsenal sphere. We've got Ethan Nwaneri and new contracts, we've got Noni Madueke, Gabby Jesus, Rodrigo and Zubi, all to discuss this morning on this episode of Arsenal Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. If you want a better quality of coverage for your club, the Arsenal, you're in the right place. Today is a mailbag or kind of hot topics episode. I'm going to answer 3 questions this morning that are hot topics all around the Arsenal at the moment. And these have come from Blue Sky. So if you don't follow me on Blue Sky, go and find me there. It's arsenal-unfiltered.bsky.social. Before I get started, I just want to say I hope you are well. We are back. June was a bit of a quieter month on the podcast front because I was getting married and I was away on honeymoon. But now we are definitely fully back in the swing of things, and we are back on that 3 times a week cycle. So I hope you are enjoying the content. And if you are a new listener, welcome. If you are an old listener or a follower, welcome back. We've got people listening, a lot of people listening from Sweden in the month of July. So hello to everyone in Sweden. And of course, we have people from the UK, the US and Australia, our regular listeners and most common countries that we get listens from. So welcome back to you guys. Okay, I'm going to start with a question here from Rohan. Rohan is a good friend of mine. And Rohan has a YouTube channel, Rohan on Arsenal, so go and check that out. Really, really good coverage and does really, really great videos and has awesome opinions on Arsenal. Rohan has asked me this morning, what targets would you set for Ethan Nwaneri next season? With the arrival of Noni Madueke, we presume, of course, is it a necessity he nailed down the Ødegaard backup role next season? Okay. I think Ethan Nwaneri is a really interesting topic right now because we've got the contract thing going on. Arsenal fans are starting to panic about this. Before we were panicking about who's the striker going to be. Then we got the news about Gyokeres, and it's almost like we need to find somewhere to fuel our anxiety and channel our anxiety. Ethan Nwaneri, having 1 year left on his contract, has become the new flavour of our worries and panic, I guess, on the internet. I think there's lots of things to say about this. I'm going to start with the contract stuff. I do think he will sign again for Arsenal. If you remember the last time that Ethan Nwaneri had a contract negotiation, his agent pushed it really, really late. And this has come around a little bit earlier than we would have wanted due to his age and the law around how long a contract you can sign when you're that young. Now that he's 18, he can sign like a much longer contract. And of course, there are clubs looking at him. He has 1 year left on his contract and he's one of the most talented teenagers there is out there. He was so impactful in the Premier League and the Champions League last year. So, of course, there are clubs looking at him. I don't think that is a reason to worry. We're not necessarily panicking about Max Dowman right now. He is another talent that every single club is looking at and will want. People probably talk about Lamine Yamal. There are clubs out there who are probably calling Barcelona going, any chance? That is just what happens. And even though Barcelona fans and Barcelona know there is no chance, clubs will go and take a punt on that. So I'm not worried about Ethan Nwaneri signing his contract. Of course, the major thing for Ethan Nwaneri will be minutes. I've said this on the podcast before. I don't really remember which podcast, but I've said it on the podcast before. How you convince Ethan Nwaneri to stay at Arsenal will be guaranteed minutes so he can carry on with his progression. And as Rohan quite rightly says, it looks like Madueke will be coming in and taking one of those spots as the Saka backup, where Ethan might have seen himself having some minutes, which is not good for Ethan Nwaneri. He's looking at the 2 positions he can play, back up to Martin Ødegaard and back up to Bukayo Saka, and seeing one of them might get filled with a £50 million player, kind of 5 years his elder. So yeah, it's not good. I think I'm going to start with the second part of the question. Is it a necessity he nailed down the Ødegaard backup role next season? Well, if Madueke arrives, I think that probably signals to Ethan Nwaneri that he will be backing up Martin Ødegaard. Is it a necessity that he nails it down? The only necessity for Ethan Nwaneri is he keeps playing football. And I do believe that. Whether that is off the right wing, even if we bring in Madueke, there might be some right wing minutes for him in the League Cup, for example. There might be minutes for him off the bench, replacing Martin Ødegaard in the Premier League, Champions League, even starting some of those games at right 8. But as long as there's minutes for him, I could see him at left 8. That's not going to be his perfect position. But if we get favourable draws in the FA Cup and the League Cup, exposing him to different positions, maybe left wing as well, I really don't mind. The only prerequisite for me and target for me for Ethan Nwaneri next season is to get minutes, to get starts and keep playing. I even don't really mind if his goal numbers went down because he's 18. I'm not really looking at him and saying, Ethan, we need you to help us deliver the Premier League title next season. It would be nice. It would be nice if he got to 9-10 goals like he did this season, or even exceed the number. That would be fantastic. We want more goals in our team, but my target for him would be just get more minutes. Absolutely, get more minutes in the tank. I think he had 20. Oh no, it's way more than 26. 37 games last year. Incredible. So 37 games for Arsenal. Last year. That's not all starts, of course. I think it was 16 starts. If he does that or more, I think that's my target met for him. I just want to see him playing football, and we've got to remember there's so many great players who have come through and made a place for themselves in the team by playing out of position. Number one on that list, of course, is Bukayo Saka. He started at left back, came in, filled a role, and actually we saw him just become an unbelievable player, and when the spot opened up on the right wing, he was moved into his slot and he's become world class. For me, Ethan Nwaneri probably is long term a number 8 in that Martin Ødegaard 8/10 role. If he has to play the left 8 for a bit, if he has to play left wing, if he has to play right wing as the backup to the backup, I don't really mind. Get him in the team wherever he can get in the team at good opportunities for him, and make sure he's playing minutes. I maintain a stance that I held sort of October time last year, where when Martin Ødegaard was out, a lot of people were calling for Ethan Nwaneri to play and play in huge games. I remember people were saying, well, why didn't he play against Inter? And my feeling was, well, it's away in the San Siro and he's literally a child. So, I still feel like at 18 years old, even though we've seen Miles Lewis-Skelly step up and absolutely rip it up in big, big games like at the Bernabeu, I'm not sure with Ethan Nwaneri that's the right play. He seems like a very different character to Miles Lewis-Skelly. And I don't want to say let's hold him back, but I still believe there probably is a case, and this might be some of the reason why the Madueke transfer is happening. There still is a case that you don't want to expose Ethan Nwaneri to the Manchester City games and the Liverpool games. Even though he did really well in the Manchester City game last year, you don't want to make him start those games. You don't want to have to rely on him. He came on when that game was already won and was able to express himself. So I think for me, give him good minutes, but not exposing him to too many issues. I have no goal and assist targets for him. I want to see him play football wherever that is on the pitch. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, thank you for that question, Rohan. I'm going to move on to another question. This question didn't come directly to me. This came to the Ars blog, requests for questions, and it comes from Arsenal Views, arsenalviews.bsky.social. Goodly morning, as they say over there. Is Zubi the most important signing we make this summer, and what do you think we'll notice most from him? So the reason why I kind of picked this question out and want to answer this question is I think it's really interesting. A lot of people are looking at the front end of the pitch. Victor Gyokeres hopefully coming in, Eze, Madueke, Rodrigo, who's it going to be? But I think actually the idea that Zubi might be the most important signing we make this summer is a really, really interesting one. We know that Arsenal are exceptionally good against big teams. We've seen it last season, 5-1 against Manchester City, 5-1 on aggregate against Real Madrid, winning both of those ties. We didn't lose to Liverpool, one of the only teams that can say that. Really good record across the last, I think, 3-4 seasons against the top 6 teams. I don't think we've lost in a huge number of days against any of those teams. So it's really important to remember that's not our problem. Our problem is the low block, and low blocks it's very easy to diagnose it as We just need someone to create something out of nothing at the top end of the pitch. But there are other ways to beat a low block. And one thing Arsenal have not done well in, I'm going to say, the past 2 seasons is win the ball in kind of our half of the pitch or even our defensive third and transition quickly. Now, a lot of people are looking at and saying, well, Martinelli is the only out-and-out speedster we've got, and he's not really been in great form, so that makes sense. We've not really been able to counter-attack on these teams when they're out of shape, so that is part of it. But I also think it is the base of our midfield, and Thomas Partey and Jorginho, they were both pretty good players for us. Obviously, horrible news that's come out about Thomas Partey recently, but as a footballer, pretty good player for us. And but their kind of idea was never to pass quickly forward. And if you watch Zubimendi and how he's played at Real Sociedad, and that's really their MO, to be honest, is kind of transitioning and counter-attacking when other teams are out of shape and their rest defence isn't set. Zubimendi really fulfills the role of being able to play that forward pass quickly, effectively, and into dangerous spaces for Martinelli, Bukayo Saka, and maybe Victor Gyokeres to go and expose. That could all become very, very exciting very quickly. So, yes, we will be looking when we're playing Everton, when we're playing, some of the promoted teams perhaps, and they're setting a low block against us, denying us a lot of space, making it really difficult for our attackers. We will be looking for our attackers, new and old, to create something from nothing. But equally, we've got to remember that Zubimendi allows us to transition better when the other team's rest defence is not in a good position. And I think if we can create a kind of quick release system where we win the ball back, immediately give it to Zubimendi, and that is the trigger for the wingers to go fast and high, I think that could really help solve our low block problem. Zubimendi is a player that, I put it on Blue Sky actually, that kind of the announcement's a bit boring now, bit done. We've known about it since January, and I feel like a lot of the excitement because of that has died down. But this is a player who Real Madrid wanted him, although they deny it. Liverpool really wanted him and very nearly got him. Manchester City wanted him when Rodri went down, and they clearly got concerns over Nico Gonzalez, who they ended up signing. So Zubimendi is a player who is wanted by the best of the best in Europe, and I'm very confident that those are just the names we know about. There probably were calls from teams like Bayern Munich and the like, who maybe Barcelona as well, who were inquiring and want to know about Martin Zubimendi because he is a top talent. So I think because of the dragged out transfer saga and it's not really a saga, dragged out transfer news about him, we're all sort of a bit like, okay. But I'm really excited to watch him play in pre-season. I'm very, very excited to watch him play in that first game against Manchester United. Is he the most important signing will make this summer? You know what? He's top 2. He's certainly top 2. It's either Gyokeres or Martin Zubimendi. I think for me, it probably just sneaks to Gyokeres or the striker. I know it's not confirmed as Gyokeres, but it's pretty close. I think it just sneaks to the striker. But for me, Zubimendi is right up there. What do you think we'll see from him most this season? It's that transition that I already spoke about. That is a way for us to beat low blocks. I'm really excited by that. And I think if we can develop a system that involves getting the ball to him quickly when we win the ball, we will be in a much better position to take advantage of counterattacks against these low block teams. Okay, we've got one more question coming up after this. Sorry for interrupting everyone, but I am on a mission and I need your help. I'm trying to get Arsenal Unfiltered into the ears of as many people as possible. And the best way that you can help me do that is by going and leaving a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts at. That really, really helps me grow the podcast and allows more people to hear the Arsenal Unfiltered coverage 3 times a week. So if you would be so kind to go and leave a review wherever you get your podcast from, I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Welcome back, and we're on to our final question. This one concerns Gabby Jesus and Rodrigo and comes from Rohan again. Rohan on Arsenal on YouTube, guys. Make sure you check him out. The question is, it's been all quiet on the Gabby Jesus front. Another season cut down by injury. Do you move him on immediately or keep him in case we don't land Rodrigo/others? Really interesting question. I'm going to presume by immediately Rohan means as soon as he's fit, because no one's going to buy an injured player at the moment. And Gabby Jesus is very injured with his ACL. We have seen images of him on Instagram starting to jump around and move better, and that's always a good sign with an ACL injury, that he's starting to develop some of that explosive force again. It's always a cutting and turning injury, the ACL, as we saw for Gabby Jesus. So to see him jumping and being on one leg again is really, really positive. But it still will be many months before we see him play for Arsenal. He's a really interesting one. Before that injury, he's just started to pick up in front of goal, and he had 2 fantastic games against Crystal Palace and one really good game against Monaco as well, where he created an assist. Do you move him on immediately, I presume once he's fit, or keep him just in case we don't land Rodrigo or the others? It's really interesting. I think that the pursuit of 3 attackers probably does end Gabriel Jesus' career at Arsenal, because Mikel Arteta really likes Kai Havertz. I think he's going to keep one of Martinelli and Trossard, and Bukayo Saka is obviously Bukayo Saka, which would leave you with a front line of 1 new attacker on the left. You know, whether that's Eze and he does a dual role, or it's Rodrigo and he is one player. Martinelli, Kai Havertz, Gyokeres, let's say that gets done. Saka, and let's say Madueke gets done. So that's 3 new attackers, plus our best 3 attackers currently. That gives you a 6. And then I think he's probably going to say Trossard goes, Jesus goes when he's fit, and we renew and bring in someone additional in coming transfer windows to kind of fill out those numbers. So for me, I think Gabriel Jesus will stay this season because they need to get value back into the player. Maybe some of those guys that I just named will stay this season, but the long-term strategic plan will be to get rid of them and move them on and have that core group of 6 as I just described it. I think Gabby Jesus will become that 7th man in the lineup once he's fit, and it's going to be a really difficult position for him to hold because he is a big player. He is used to, or at least for the majority of his career, used to being a key cog, not necessarily the star guy, but a really important bit of squads. And I think he is just going to move very, very rapidly down the pecking order. What would I do, I guess, is the question. And I think you have to, one, get value back into him. So you're probably going to have to play him in a few games to show that he's still at it. Maybe give him some League Cup games, maybe give him some FA Cup games to rest the new striker and obviously keep Kai Havertz off the injury table again this season. If we can do that and get value back in him, I think you sell him next summer. I don't think you sell him in January. No point. You may as well keep him and continue to build his fitness and try and get a better deal in the summer. So, yeah, for me, it's probably get him fit, get him firing, build some value back in the player, and then move him on, because he will just fall down that pecking order quite rapidly. I do really feel for him. I do. I think he is a player with an unbelievable work rate, an unbelievable passion for the game as well. And since that 2022 World Cup that you could argue they never should have been playing, it should have been in the summer. And he's one of these players who I think is really suffering with how football scheduling has gone over the last 5 years and the problems that that's created since COVID, really. I think he's really suffered because of that change and that desire to get more money. I guess the second part of the question is, in case we don't get Rodrigo. So let's imagine a scenario where we don't get 3 attackers, we only get 2, and that's maybe, let's say it's Madueke and Gyokeres, because they're the 2 that are most far on. I think Trossard is still ahead of him in Mikel Arteta's eyes, mainly because Trossard is reliable and available all the time. So I think Gabriel Jesus probably would still go in the summer because he's a really expensive asset. Sorry, next summer. He's a really expensive asset who's very, very rarely available. And you look at what Arsenal have just done with Takahiro Tomiyasu. Again, another expensive asset, very rarely available. They've said, look, for you, the best thing for you is if we cut ties here, you can go back to Japan. Maybe Gabriel Jesus is looking at it and going, maybe Europe's just not for me. Maybe I should go back to Brazil. And I think it was Palmeiras that he is a kind of boyhood player for. So I think he still goes, even if we don't land a left-sided attacker. I think we're going to get Gyokeres by the looks of things. We'll have Gyokeres and Kai in there. Trossard will be the backup to Martinelli on that left-hand side. Madueke/Ethan, backup to Saka on the right-hand side. His availability just means that there is no way Arsenal can't sell him. So that for me would be the plan on the Gabby Jesus front. I feel for him. I really liked him as a player, but availability is the best ability. So that's a really important thing for Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. So whether we get three attackers or whether we get two, I think the plan will be give him 5 to 10 games next season. Hopefully he scores a couple of goals. We build some value back in the player, and we try and recoup some money in the summer of 2026. That's it from me, guys. Like I said at the start, these have all these questions originate on Blue Sky, so come and find me on there. Arsenal.bsky.social. Sorry, Arsenal-unfiltered.bsky.social, and I'm really trying to grow it on there. Trying to grow my following. So if you have enjoyed this episode or any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, come across, start an account if you don't have one. It's a great place to be. Much better football scene than X or Twitter. And come and give it a follow, and let's connect, let's chat, let's talk Arsenal together. All that's left to say is thank you so much for following, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you again very, very soon.